how and why did you get into guitar making?
This all started about 25 years ago.
Uh-huh.
And I had a small guitar store in Chicago.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
And I was doing repairs and teaching lessons mainly. And I was very poor, and it was a very small store.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
And I had an interest in it, and I mainly largely self-taught. So I worked with another luthier for a little bit, and I got a few ideas from him. And I made about 10 or 12 guitars before I started calling it Harden Engineering. So basically I was slow at my store, so I would sit there and use my tools for repairing guitars to make guitars. So I made about, I don't know, maybe 12, 15 guitars. Nice. And every one they would sell, and I would learn a little bit more about what I wanted to do with it. And so then after about, I don't know, maybe 15 guitars, I came up with this design called the Switchblade, which is an original body shape, and then I started using the name Harden Engineering. And they started selling.
Nice.
So at the time I was very poor, so getting $1,500 for a guitar was a pretty good thing.
Yeah, that sounds good. And then
go ahead.
Can you talk about your process now of kind of building a guitar, and how long it takes, kind of what goes into that?
Well, my building has gone through different phases. So the reason on my early guitars it's all a bunch of metal work and handmade pickups and everything is I was simply too poor to buy everything. So I started hand making everything, and I spent, within those first guitars I made, I spent about, I don't know, 6 months learning how to make a pickup. Took me a long time before I made one that sounded good. But I learned how to make a good pickup. And so really my guitars are largely about the pickups,
Gotcha.
Basically, if you have a really good fret job on some resonant wood with really nice pickups and electronics, a lot of people don't talk about the actual electronics of guitar, which really changes the sound tremendously, what type of potentiometers you use, etc. I'm really, really painstaking about that, But again, now this has been going on for 25 years, so I've had a lot of time to try different things and figure out what I really like. So when you buy a guitar from me now, you're buying 25 years of guitar making experience boiled into a reasonably affordable guitar. What happened with me was, so I was making these guitars on my own, and they were selling for $1,500. I was contacted by some dealers, like some more heavyweight guys, who pushed my price up into the $3,500 to $4,500 range, because it was a completely handmade guitar.
Right.
But I didn't really know about, say, the boutique market and that. I was just kind of a guy making guitars in Chicago, so. Now, the reason that the blues stuff is, as a kid, I played on Maxwell Street and played with a lot of old blues dudes, so.
Oh, really? Wow.
Oh, yeah, well, that's how the idea of what I like in sound. When I was learning how to make pickups, I didn't want it to sound like Steely Dan, I wanted it to sound like Hound Dog Taylor,
Right.
So I had that sensibility because when I was a younger dude, I played with a lot of old dudes, Back in the 80s, this was still...
Who did you play with?
Lefty Diz. I played on Maxwell Street a lot.
Yeah.
I opened up for B.B. King in... what's that town in Mississippi that he's from? Indianola, Mississippi.
Okay. Wow. Damn, that's amazing.
So I played a lot of blues, and so I know, the sound, I was, for a period of my life, I was a professional musician, so I know what a good sound is. Yeah. And I know what a guitar should feel like that's going to play well all night long. Really what makes a guitar good is really good fret job, really good intonation, really good pickups and electronics. Nice. Now the rest is, subjective, what type of wood are we going to use, and etc. And what kind of shape and what kind of aesthetic are we going for, So anyway, I was building these higher end guitars for the more, higher end crowd of the boutique market, and that was going well for a while. And I was making pretty good money doing that. And then I noticed this kind of fell off, and I was kind of, one bad thing about that is that, I had made a lot of guitars, but they were mainly, and I don't want this to sound the wrong way, they were mainly, like, say, on somebody's wall hanging, say a more wealthier person. Nothing against people with wealth or expensive guitars. Believe me, I'm not against that, But what I noticed is, as a brand, I wasn't really growing because, guys that actually play gigs usually can't afford like a $4,000 guitar. Some can. I mean, again, I'm not against people paying money for guitars, you know. But as a business model for me, I started noticing, hey, if I use some of the same skills I have in making a $4,000 guitar and make it so that you can buy it for like less than $1,000, which is possible to do because I'm not doing quite as fancy a guitar. And I could do, pre-made Telecaster bodies or something, like the Muddy Waters. So that cuts my time down considerably.
Nice.
So what happened was, over the last couple of years, I've really boiled it down to, hey, how can I make a musician-ready, fairly affordable guitar? So instead of making one a month, I could make 5 a month.
Gotcha.
Okay?
Gotcha.
So my money is still the same.
Gotcha.
But more are getting out because guys that are actually players of gigs can afford that realm. Most guys can afford $850.
Right.
That's really not, for the Muddy Waters you can get from me direct for like $850.
Okay. Nice.
So it's lists for about $10.50, but because for the last couple years, what it's been about for me is getting guitars out there in gigs, which has worked really, really well. And I live in Hammond, Indiana, which is just south of Chicago, and there's a really healthy guitar playing community in Northwest Indiana, as is Chicago as well, So anyway, I sell a lot of guitars just to guys that just play and then maybe want something a little higher quality but different. So even though you're getting a guitar that's not costing $4,000, I mean, you got my 25 years worth of pickup making / electronics. I don't chintz out on it. It's not like you're getting like the cheap stuff, You're still getting my same fret job that I do on a $4,000 guitar. So I try to offer, now where I'm at is I try to offer something really high quality with kind of the sound and aesthetic of the blues, just because that's mainly what I play and what I grew up with. I also played a lot of gospel music, So what I try to do is offer a really affordable yet really high quality gig ready guitar. When you buy it from me, you don't need to go get it set up or anything. The thing is ready to go. Play all night long, and really good sound, nice fret job, and cool looks.
Yeah.
It always comes down to looks. You got to make something that looks cool enough for somebody to buy, but then it's got to play right. It's got to have good intonation. It's got to have good sound. Not everybody likes the same thing in pickups. I'm probably not a heavy metal pickup guy. I guess I would like an old Harmony or Supro for the pickup sound. But the problem is with Harmonies, the Supros is a lot of those things are almost not gig ready because the action's not good, the intonation's not good. So a lot of the nuts and bolts are not there. Versus if you can buy something that looks cool, but actually is roadworthy and ready to go. The intonation's right, the action's good. A guy that's playing a gig needs good action, man.
Right.
Basically, where I'm at with this story, so I started really with nothing, and I just kept on building and spent 25 years now.
Wow.
Building guitars, and I'm not a huge name or anything, but I am somewhat known.
Right.
And that's just strictly from selling guitars by hand.
If you had
I just completed the 555th guitar.
Wow, that's awesome. That's a landmark. That's pretty cool.
I would say the electronics and the pickups are like a real major part of it, because I'm really picky about that stuff, and I've actually spent the time to work it out. For instance, most people's tone control doesn't really work. You turn your control down and it doesn't really do anything. Then at the end, it has kind of a farty sound like you'd have from a wah-wah pedal cocked in the middle, right? That's not really a tone control. My kind of guitars, tone control could be sparkly, telly, Buck Owens, all the way down to Wes Montgomery with just a turn of the knob. So there's things that could be done. Sure. So the electronics are something that a lot of people they chintz out on. Simply because if you're making $10,000 guitars and 10,000 guitars and you can save a nickel on each one, that's a lot of money, right? So,
right.
Versus me, if it's going to cost me an extra $1 to do something, but it's going to sound really good, why wouldn't I do that? It's $1.
Wow.
So if they spend 4 cents on a capacitor and I spend $1 on a capacitor, you see what I'm saying? So I use really high quality parts. When I was a kid, I was a Schwinn bike mechanic, all right? Now, back in the days with Schwinn bikes, it was a lifetime guarantee, which my guitars have that also. And it was about customer service. This is back when, America was still, America's job one kind of mentality. I know that doesn't exist anymore, but, you're buying a product made in America by an American, 4 guys that play in America. If there's a problem, I stand behind what I do. And I try to, instead of just trying to shave off a couple of bucks, I try to make the absolute highest quality thing I can, within reason for the amount of money being spent. Obviously, if your $850 guitar is not as good as a $4,000 one, but you'd be surprised how pretty close they are. So I try to make every guitar I do. Each one is handmade by me. It's not like, there's no factory going on here or anything. I actually make each guitar, and I try to do the best job I can on each one, and I stand behind it. If you have a problem, I'll either fix it or give you your money back.
Yeah. Wow.
So.
And then do you have, maybe you can talk about the models you make, and maybe like the blues artists who inspired you for some of your models, and if you have any favorite models that you make? Put a bunch of questions.
It's a hard subject because I've made so many different models through the years. Basically, it's like this. I've actually worked in a factory when I was a young person. So I don't like the idea of doing the same thing all the time.
Gotcha. Okay.
Consequently, there's many models. Most of my models nowadays are based off like telly style stuff. For the Blues Bird is a Strat style guitar with a telly pickup. I have another model called the Muddy Waters, which has been popular, which is a certain type of Telecaster, but with those, Fender amp knobs on it, and kind of a barn brown kind of relic finish, So I'm constantly coming up with new models, but, I do Firebirds, I do Flying V's, I do, my own original design called the Switchblade, and I have other models, the Little Calumet, which is named after a river right by my house. And,
oh, that's cool.
Basically, what I try to do is take the classic elements of guitar design from the 50s and 60s. And I think one thing about being a guitar maker is you take the different facets that have been done and how can you combine them in an interesting, modern way. Even though you're getting a guitar that looks like it's from the 50s, the playability is that of a absolutely modern, high quality, high performance guitar, you know. So the only thing I'm not high performance on is the way it looks. In terms of fret job, pickups, electronics, you know, playability, it's high performance, you know. I want to make a guitar that'll make you play better than you can on your other guitars.
Wow, I like that. I've never heard that before. That's awesome.
Well, it's possible.
Yeah.
When you buy your off-the-shelf guitar, A, it's not intonated because they never intonate them. And it's not set up. You wonder how come, you know, this thing cost me a pretty good chunk of change. It's good, but it's not great. And I think it's a little attention to detail to the little things like perfect intonation, really good fret job, just all the little things that you need to do to set up a guitar to play it optimally. Most people buy a guitar off the shelf, then they go pay a tech to set it up properly and get it to play right, you know. My guitars, you get that right off the bat, you know.
Nice. And then you also make custom amplifiers too, and other
I
products?
stopped doing amps.
Okay.
I do pedals. I do one pedal right now, which is like a kind of a tube screamer on steroids, but I wouldn't call it a tube screamer. It's a booster distortion. Yeah.
Gotcha. And
so
then
I don't do amps.
Then maybe can get back into the pickups. I don't, maybe you can describe this, but I was listening to like a lot of videos of, I've never played any of your guitar. Actually, I've played one of the guitars, but it seemed like the sound of them is unlike anything I've ever heard. It's like amazing, like a 50s or 60s kind of blues recording almost. But I'm just wondering if you can dive more into like the sound of your guitars, and I'm assuming that took years and years with the pickups and tinkering around and stuff.
Again, I started building my own pickups, and the goal was not to be just do a Fender pickup, you know, or a Gibson pickup. Again, I like, you know, 50s and 60s harmonies, etc. I think those pickups sound really good, but again, I didn't want to just copy everybody else's stuff, so it really comes down to this. Magnetism is a wide open field. You know, it's everybody's like, well, you do it like Fender did it, or you do it like Gibson did it. Magnetism is like, you know, studying the elements. You know what I mean? Okay, if you have X amount of magnetism produced over a coil, you're going to get this kind of sound, you know. So I'm not going to get into my secret recipes or anything like that. I won't do that, but I'll just say that my stuff is original. If you like classic American guitar sounds, you will like it because it does sound like it's something for the 50s or 60s, which I think most people will agree is the golden time of electric guitar. Because you can play anything on it. You can play Van Halen on it and it'll sound good. You can play the Animals on it, it'll sound good. You can play blues on it, it'll sound good. So you can shred on that's why people do shred on old guitars, because they sound really good, you know? There's something about 50s pickups that people seem to really like, and I'm not going to go into it unless you want to just devote a whole thing to magnetism. And
Right.
all I'll just say is that over 25 years, I have a stash of magnets that work for the sound that I want to go for.
Right.
And I will say this, you know, to me a P90 is a really good pickup. Anybody that's ever played like a real old P90 knows that it's really, I guess that would be the closest to like other people's pickups that I go for.